Hi, this is Andre. We're going to take a look at using various looping techniques to get song structure happening in a live looping performance. This particular song is called Asking for a Friend, and it uses a pretty unusual technique, which is changing the loop start point to beat 4 of the musical pattern rather than having it be on beat 1. There was a very specific technical issue that I was trying to solve, which led me to do this, and it also gives a subtle but substantial different musical effect. So let's listen to the performance first off, and then we will come back and I will bore you to death with my talking. Yeah, that's a post-performance fade-out, and yeah, I totally messed up the ending of that tune. So rather than try and get a complete take that I was happy with every aspect of, I took this take that I was happy with every aspect of except the end, and I got rid of the very end. So this one begins yet again with one of my very biggest cliches, which is do a sus unrounded multiply, start with a loop of a few milliseconds long, and then build that up using sus insert, sus replace, overdub, all kinds of weird stuff. It's a total cliche of mine. What can I say? I love the way it sounds, and I like the fact that it always comes out a little different. When I do this stuff, we're talking about building the loop on millisecond by millisecond events. So I don't think I could get it exactly the same way even if I wanted to, but a big part of the fun of doing this way is that I really don't know what's going to happen, and I like being surprised by the weird stuff that happens. This is basically the equivalent of me throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. So now here we are using sus Unrounded Multiply again to impose a new rhythm. I'm playing a beat on the guitar and I'm pressing Unrounded Multiply throughout the beat. I'm pressing it down on beat 1, I'm releasing it at the very end of beat 4, so that I'm creating a new 1-bar loop based on the pattern, and I'm using sus Unrounded Multiply to redefine the length of that loop to the parameters of the beat that I'm playing. And now we get to what Frank Zappa used to refer to as the crux of the biscuit. I'm about to change the loop start point to beat 4 of this particular rhythm. And why I'm doing that will be revealed a little bit as the tune evolves, but for right now, I'm about to hit the loop start point on beat 4, so that becomes the new technical start point. It's not going to sound like the loop has changed particularly. It's not like the beat that I just looped is going to come across sounding any different, but the EDP is going to be reading the beginning of the loop as being at a different point, as being on beat 4. So now we're copying that loop into loop 2, and I know that right after I finish the copying, I want to reverse this loop. So at the same time that the loop is copying, I'm changing banks on the FCB mid-copy so that I can go down to a bank that has a reverse button. The bank that I've been using for switching between loops, I don't have a dedicated reverse button on that particular bank. So to do reverse, I have to change banks. And then this is switching layers back and forth, overdubbing a couple of notes, reversing or forwarding the loop, and building things up that way. It's a very standard live looping technique. And now I'm switching back up to the multiple loops bank, and I'm going to set the start point here. The reason I'm setting the start point again is because when you reverse the loop, the start point shows up in a different musical spot. And I want to make sure, again, that the start point of all the loops in this tune are on beat 4. So that's why I am resetting the start point on beat 4 here, so that it matches up with where the start point is on the rest of the tune. Now I'm turning off overdub specifically because I know that I'm going to want to have overdub off when I come back to this loop in just a second. And now I'm copying this loop, which is in loop 2, into loop 3. And I'm going to build up the loop a little more in the loop 3 slot. And now that we have a foundation groove built up, I'm going to record the melody for the tune. I'm going to use multiply so that we can take that foundation groove and expand it out to however many times its original length that we need to fit the melody. And also notice I'm starting multiply a little early, a little sooner than I need to. That's because I need to make sure that I close multiply before I switch to loop 2. And I want to switch to loop 2 as soon as I'm done playing the first iteration of the melody. Now I'm stopping the multiply process with the multiply button because I need overdub to keep overdubbing that last note that I'm sustaining. And now we're about to switch back to loop 2 and listen to the transition because the transition is going to come on beat 4 of the groove. And here again, we're about to switch back to loop 3, and the transition is going to fall on beat 4. And again, it's a very different kind of effect. I mean, it's not going to beat you over the head with, wow, listen to that unbelievable transition. But it's a subtle thing that does make a difference to me. I'm also going to quickly turn off overdub because I forgot to turn it off when I left loop 3 to go back to loop 2, and I don't want overdub to be open just yet. That's because I'm going to play a harmony of the melody line, but I don't want to add that harmony into the loop, I just want to play it live. So now we're getting into the real reason that I changed the loop start point to beat 4. I wanted to do a particular transition here where I could switch back to loop 2 and start playing the B section melody. And I needed to be able to start multiplying that loop before I started playing the melody. In other words, I needed to start playing the melody right on beat 1, right on the musical downbeat, but I needed to be able to hit multiply before that. So the solution I came up with was to set all the loop start points to beat 4, and that means that when I switch to a new loop, I'm on beat 4 when I get there, and that means that I have a split second to hit multiply after making that transition. I can't hit multiply before, because if you go into a waiting state, if you go into a place where the EDP is waiting to change to a different loop and then you hit multiply, you will actually tell the EDP to copy the loop you're leaving into the destination loop location. So if I'm in loop 3, I switch to loop 2, and then in the waiting state before it makes the change, I press multiply, I'm not going to start multiplying loop 2. I'm going to copy loop 3 into loop 2. So this was the best solution I could come up with as far as finding a way to make that multiply happen without having it be at the very beginning and without having to make people sit through an entire 8 bars of that loop before I started overdubbing anything. I also made life a little more difficult for myself because there's that little 3-note line right before the musical downbeat, that down, down. You can see that I don't sing for a living. That bow, down. And I didn't want to add that into the loop. So what actually happens is I play that on beat 4, and then right after those 3 notes, I hit the multiply button, and then I start playing the melody. So the little 3-note riff, which really doesn't need to be there, it's not a very big deal at all, but I really liked it. So the little 3-note riff gets played, and then in between the end of the 3rd note and the downbeat, the beginning of the melody, that's when I had to press multiply. I don't know why I do this to myself either, but I like the way it sounds. So that's the B section melody. I am ending this multiply with overdub because I know the next thing that I play, the harmony line I'm about to play, I do want to add that into this particular loop. So we're ending multiply with overdub so that we can transition seamlessly into an overdub. And now we're about to switch back to loop 3. I'm going to be playing a different harmony than anything I've played before, and I'm going to be playing that live. And again, the transition will happen on beat 4 rather than on beat 1, so it's not something that's necessarily super obvious, but if you listen closely, it does have a slightly different kind of feel to it. And now we're about to switch back to loop 1, the OG loop. We haven't been back here since we started building up loop 2. It's just been switching between loop 2 and loop 3 and adding various things to those 2 loops. So this is the first time we've been back to loop 1. This is still a very new arrangement for me, so I've been experimenting with different things happening when I get back to loop 1. Sometimes I'll overdub new layers, sometimes I'll noodle gratuitously, and in this particular performance, I just sit there and let loop 1 play. Now we're about to switch back to loop 2. Because loop 1 is so sparse, it's a little more obvious when the change happens, and it's a little more readily apparent that the loop is changing at a point other than the musical beginning of the phrase, other than the musical downbeat. And when we enter loop 2, I'm going to be playing yet another harmony line that I haven't played yet. And now we're going back to loop 3, and I'm playing the same harmony that I played the last time we were in loop 3. It's still being played live because I didn't overdub that particular harmony. getting ready to switch back to loop 1 for the end, and as I mentioned before, I faded out this particular performance because I really kind of biffed the very end, and I like to make fun of myself a lot, but I don't need to embarrass myself quite that much. So no, you don't get to hear it. Yes, it was bad enough that I had to fade it out. So a few closing notes on this tune. Most of the tunes that I've been doing thus far in the Song Structure series I've been playing for many, many years. The first two, Interference and One Way Street, I've been playing live since 2004 or 2005. This tune, Asking for a Friend, I've been playing live for about 2 months. I started doing it when I started booking some new gigs here. It's now February of 2020, and I've just started doing solo gigs again for the first time in like 3.5 years or something scary like that. And when I was thinking about what I could play, I thought that this would be an interesting tune to try and work up an arrangement for. This tune was not originally conceived as a live looping tune. It was actually done as a studio piece on an album called You Won't Believe What Happens Next, and it was not conceived on that record as a live looping tune. There's actually no echoplex on the entire album. That definitely makes life a little more difficult in some ways, but I also think it's a really good challenge because musicians who write music tend to write around what they can already do. You know, so if you're a guitar player and you're writing guitar-based music, you're probably going to be writing stuff that you can already play. That's normal. You know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do. It's just kind of human nature. And if we're conceiving a looping tune from scratch, then we're probably going to be building a tune using what we understand about the looper that we're using. When you try and take a tune that was not originally conceived for looping and adapt it for looping, it forces you, or it forces me anyway, to think in different ways. And this tune is a good example of that. You know, there was a particular thing I wanted to have happen in a particular way, and I was stubborn about it, and the best solution I've come up with was to change the loop start point to beat 4. This is still a very new arrangement for me as I'm recording this video. It will probably go through a lot of different evolutions, and hopefully I'll figure out what I'm doing at the end as well. Finally, in the gratuitous and disgusting self-promotional category, if you like the tune at all, it's from an album called You Won't Believe What Happens Next, which is not a very well-known record of mine. There's no looping or echoplex on it at all, but it's one of my favorite things that I've done. So if you happen to like this tune, I would be very, very delighted and grateful if you take the time to check out the studio version. With that out of the way, thank you as always for checking in, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye-bye.